Howdy everyone, Matt here. I got a question for you. What do you think of that clinical toolbox? Do you think it's great? Maybe not. Let's talk about it. All right, everyone. First and foremost, let me introduce myself. My name is Matt. I am Matt the PT, coming at you with another video, another topic or something in the physical therapy world. And this one is that clinical toolbox. You probably heard about that way back in school. I know I did. When your instructors teach you something, they say, put that in your toolbox. Put this in your toolbox, and you go along, and you're just collecting all these things and putting them in that nice little box. But I will say, as I've went along in my career and seen things, I'm thinking maybe that's probably, could be not the best thing to do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, like I said, back at school, instructors teach you something and they say, put this in your toolbox and then put that in your toolbox. And it was a very elementary, very, basic level idea of something that you could put in there and that you could utilize at any point. And I've met people that just have continued doing that over the years. So they say like, oh, I'm going to go take this course. I'm going to put this in my toolbox. Oh, I'm going to learn this thing and put that in my toolbox. And I just have this collection of all this stuff in my little toolbox that I can just pull out at any point. But I would say as I went through my career and worked with other people, talked with other people, and just seen things, I don't feel like that's the best thing. And the reason why is that person often doesn't know what to do when the tool in that toolbox doesn't work. So if we look at like what's in a toolbox and, in general, you have like a hammer in there. What's the hammer for? What's for driving in nails, maybe prying stuff, perform a percussive adjustment to something. You have screwdrivers in there, a wrench, you have some pliers, just those basic things to just do those little basic things around the house. And that's what it seems like some people do. They just kind of collect. Hey, I know a little bit about this. I know a little bit about that. I know about it. So somebody comes in, I can give you this. I can just give you that. I just give you this. But what happens when that thing that they give somebody doesn't work or they don't respond? And I'm saying that it doesn't work by, we don't get a positive response by saying somebody feels better, or maybe they do start to feel better and they plateaued. And then it's like, what's the next thing to do? Okay, well, I got to throw this other thing at something. And I question is, does that lead to people saying that they failed therapy, which I always think is the dumbest thing to say. But it's like, did that person just not fully get the treatment that they needed, that didn't necessarily make them worse? It just provided no effect on there. And I'll give you a couple examples. One of the first times I ever really saw this is I was talking with a therapist and they were saying they had somebody with neck pain and they were like, they just weren't getting better. And I was like, well, what did you give them? And they were just like, well, I gave them just some chin tucks and I did this and that. And I went, well, wait a minute. Why didn't you progress the chin tucks there? And they kind of just didn't understand and they were just going all over the place. And if you know me, I do utilize MDT as the basis of how I treat. Yes, people can have their opinions and whatnot, but I'm just going to use that as an example. But look at it to say, hang on, there's more that you can do with this person through there. You got a positive response, but it plateaued. You didn't take the next step. You abandoned it so quickly. Why did you do that? You don't need to do that. You need to do this next thing. And this person just didn't understand. They're like, no, we got to do all this, do all this. And that kind of kind of started this in my head of going, is this really the best thing to just sit there and collect? And I think just talking with this person, like they had taken like a MDT course, and that's like really all that they picked out of it. I know with another example, another therapist had somebody coming in who had 10 plus years of back pain. So it was a chronic back pain patient. And I got the person on the second visit, but on the first visit, I'm reading the eval. And they performed 3 sets of 10 of the press-ups of repeated extension and lying. And they said, oh, no change in it. And so let's do repeated flexion and lying. And so they gave them 3 sets of 10 and they said, oh, no directional preference. We're just going to do stabilization. And if you understand with like directional preference, if somebody has back pain, you're able to find a directional preference, they're typically going to do better because you've, found a directional preference. And I'm looking at this going, we don't know if there's a directional preference because we didn't go to those next steps. I mean, somebody with 10 plus years of back pain, are they going to get really any changes in symptoms in 5 minutes of just doing repeated motions? No, it may need to be doing something over days, repeatedly. And they just couldn't grasp that. They're just saying, no, we got to do all these things. And I'm not saying either one of these therapists are bad, or I'm not saying any of that. It was just like, wait a minute. You need to understand that next step that you can take. There's another step and another step and another step that you can take with this person to see if that is what they need. If you have a clinical toolbox, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the video. And I'll share an example that actually happened one time. Had a student with me. We had an older gentleman come in, had an onset of back pain. And we found the repeated extension line, the press-ups. We got a positive response. He felt pretty good. We said, all right, we'd like you to do that. We sent him out. And so he came back in 2 days later and he said, oh, I'm worse. And the student he just started sweating. And he thought, oh no, we got to do this. And I said, hold up, hang on. Let's pause for a moment. We got to investigate. So we start talking, how are you worse? And he was saying, oh, I'm just so sore. My back is so sore. And I said, oh, well, what about the pain that you were coming in with? He said, oh, I'm not having that pain. I'm just so sore. I've been doing this stuff, as you told me, and I'm just sore. But okay, well, that's actually not a negative thing. He was stiff. He just had not been, moved his back like that. And who knows how long. It's just stretching tissue. It's like, you're okay. So I said, just keep up with it. We did other stuff with him. I said, come back in, 2 more days and we'll reassess you again. Came back that third visit. He actually goes, I'm actually feeling a lot better. That soreness had gotten better, and his original pain and the issues that he was coming with it to us for had gotten better. He was functioning around the house better. He was having less pain. He's moving better. He's doing all those things positive. And this became a moment to really talk with the student and said, I understand that you saw this and we just wanted to bounce so quickly. Oh, no, we got to do this stuff. But we needed to go to that next step. Let's assess this person. Let's do this stuff. And I think that's what happens when we just have stuff in the toolbox, that we don't do that second, third, fifth, 10th step. We just see this one little thing didn't work. Let's bounce. We got to do this thing. We just got to do it. And we just got to do this stuff. We just got to do this. And that's just what happens. And I really believe that with as many therapists are coming out, we're having more people are coming out. There's a greater demand for physical therapy, that we can really start getting into where we say, hey, I'm just going to kind of specialize in these areas. I'm really going to focus more over into this area, or I'm going to focus more over into that area. Now, granted, yes, there are areas that just don't have a lot of PT. So yeah, you got to be someone who wears multiple hats, but I do believe in some areas to say, these are the things that I'm really good at. My partner over here is good at these things, or maybe the person across the road is good at these things. That there's plenty of people, and that it can lead to better outcomes, that people can start to get significantly better. Like I said, I don't believe that why some people fail therapy is because they weren't going to respond. It's that the treatment didn't match the issue that they had. It didn't make them necessarily worse. It just didn't make them better. And that could be anything. Maybe it's not movement. Maybe it's just talking with them, getting them into mental health counseling. Maybe it's just getting them on an exercise program. It's something, but it's understanding what is that next step? What is that next step? What is that next step? So in just wrapping this up, I think a lot of our arguments about proper treatments and stuff come from this same kind of area, that we're just pulling something from our toolbox, a very superficial elementary knowledge of something, and just arguing about it from there. I remember someone a couple months ago was asking online about a good manual therapy certification. And, someone else said MDT and I said MDT. And this person just got on there and just argued so much that was not the right thing to do. And just coming at me. And I'm like, can you even explain it? Do you even understand what you were talking about? You're coming at it from a very basic knowledge. And it's funny enough, this guy was like a clinic owner of many clinics, which his whole thing was like getting, I want people to coming in and you have to do all this. You don't do that with MDT. And so he's this argument, you could just look up stuff online and that's all you have to do with you. And it pointed out to him, it's like, well, you want people just to keep coming in so that you can just keep billing them. Like, that's really the thing. And I'm also like, you can't argue about me with the manual therapy stuff, because I do a lot of manual. I've studied a lot of it, But it was saying you're coming at this from a very elementary knowledge of something. You don't know you're arguing stuff that is explained in it, that has an understanding of those things, and that you understand. And I understand the limits of what I could do with MDT, and maybe have to switch to something else or refer somebody to something else. And I've told that to students over the years. I've told them, when you start to learn something, you find something you like, get really into it, really understand it, understand the full breadth of it, understand all of it. Somebody had told me one time, when you get into something, become a purist about it so that you really understand it. And I say, when you really understand all of it, you know how to take those next steps and that next step and that next step. You're not going to have somebody coming to you for 12 visits with something, and then on that 13th visit be like, oh, it's just a little soft tissue thing, and then they're better. No, you would have recognized it so much earlier. And I think, again, maybe we don't need to go with the toolbox analogy that's just a bunch of random things, but maybe more like a golf bag. Think about all what's in the golf bag with your golf clubs. They're all a little different, but they all have the same goal. They all have the goal of putting the ball in the hole. You use the driver off of the tee box. You use the wedges out on the green. Out on the fairways and those things. You use the putter on the green. You don't use your driver on the green. You don't use your putter on the tee box. Now, if somebody's writing on the argument and be like, well, you can, but do the pros do that? That's a trick. And, that's a funny thing that somebody does, is they'll get their driver out and put it up on the, and they'll chip it in or what. That's just a trick. That's not what the average person does. But all those golf clubs in there have the same job of putting the ball in the hole. So maybe we should think about, like, hey, the things that I learn about are to reach this point. I want to get people with this conditions or these kind of issues to this point. And I'm just going to focus the things that I see to help me reach that point. Rather than just knowing everything, I just have a smaller group of skills. So there you go. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up button. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you a copay or anything like that. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts, beliefs, and opinions all down in the comments below. And until next time, take care of yourself. Take care of your patients. I'll see you then.